Today we're going to be looking at only 4 words from the Bible that I believe can literally change your life. And they come right out of the very first book of the Bible. Hey, welcome once again to the Passage Podcast. My name is Jim Merle, and once again today we're going to be taking a look at only one passage that can hopefully help us to grow deeper in our faith. Today we're going to be going back literally almost to the very beginning, Genesis chapter 12. And we're going to dive right in because there's a lot to unpack here. But I promise you this, if you stick with me, you're going to see that we are looking at an amazing story. Now, admittedly, we don't always do many stories on here because it simply takes too much time. And typically, you're not going to find an entire story kind of hidden in one verse. But today we kind of do. We're going to look at this amazing story, and there'll be 2 principles here that we can learn that are going to be crucial to our life. So much so that these 4 words, only 4 words, that we're going to look at today again can literally change your life. I'm not making that up. I'm not trying to oversell it. They are just so important to the Christian journey and to our entire life. Today's passage comes from Genesis chapter 12 and verse 1. And this part of the story of Abraham says, "Now the Lord said to Abram, 'Get out of your country, from your family, and from your father's house to a land that I will show you.'" Now, you might be a little bit confused. For one, you might say, where are those 4 words that we're going to talk about? Well, we'll get to that in a second. But 2, you might be like, well, that's kind of different. Typically use a different type of verses for our discussions. You're kind of right. Typically, we look at kind of a more motivational on the surface verse, or a verse that has specific words that we can kind of dig through and define. But that's not what we're doing here today. We're just going to unpack this verse just a little bit. Now, you might say, this is just part of a verse, Jim. I thought you were a student of context. Well, this is one of my favorite stories in Scripture. And I picked this verse kind of because it does represent the key to the whole story. And you might have missed it. But those 4 words we're going to talk about are right here in the verse. So this is the story of Abraham. And God had called him to leave a land that he knew and to leave and go eventually to what would be the promised land. But he didn't know at the time. As a matter of fact, Abraham was a wealthy man. It was not like Abraham had been down and out and had a difficult time in life and really was just struggling to find a place to be. He was actually doing pretty well for himself. God called him out of that and said, "I want you to leave." Now, here's the thing that you have to understand about Abraham and his story. He got up, he took everything, he packed up, and he did what God said. He just took off. Well, let's map that out a bit, and let's look at where he went. For one, he crossed into a desert land. Now, he couldn't just cut through the desert. If he had, all of his animals would have likely died, and most likely even his family may have passed, including him. They wouldn't have made it, but they had to take the long way. By taking the long way, that took them around what we know today as the Fertile Crescent. Now, if you map that out, he had traveled with his family anywhere between 800 and 1,000 miles. Now, I realize that being on YouTube, I have kind of a, quote, global audience, so I have to explain a bit here, but basically speaking, I live in Alabama in the United States. And if I jumped into my car right now and took off as fast as I could drive 960 miles and be in Texas. That would take me almost 14 hours to complete. But can you imagine walking that distance? Can you imagine picking up everything with no cars, no minivans, no airplanes, and just walking? And on top of that, God didn't tell him where to go. And these are the 4 words that we're going to look at. God said to Abraham, "I want you to go to a place," watch this, "I will show you." You see, again, he didn't know where he was going. You know, if I were Abraham, probably after about a week, I would have been like, "All right, God, this is good enough, right? I mean, we've gone far enough." Or maybe after a month or 2, or maybe even 3, I might say, "God, we've been traveling on foot every day for 3 months. Surely we've made it where you want us to go." Well, they just kept walking. chances are in that terrain, it could have taken Abraham and his family up to a year even to walk that distance, walking every single day, not knowing where they were going and not knowing the future. Now, I love this story because of its applications to our lives. We live as Christians and, we walk by faith. And we walk every single day and we do not know what the future holds. Many times we do not know even where we are going. We know that God has a purpose and plan for our life. We know that He has equipped us with gifts and skills, abilities, and sometimes even passions, but we don't know exactly what the end looks like. We may not know our destination. And that's why I say these 4 words will change your life. When God says even to us, I will show you. If we can grasp these 4 words, if we can take these 4 words literally, put them in our head, or even more importantly, put them in our hearts, we can do great things. We just have to be obedient. We just have to keep moving. We have to keep going. We have to dive deeper. We have to use our gifts. We have to live out our lives with purpose. We have to go one step after the other to get closer and closer and closer to what God has for us. Admittedly, sometimes I have doubts. I have questions. Got the card to prove it. Abraham did, but he kept going. Why? Because God said, I will show you. I think that is what God is saying to me today. I think that's what He's saying to you. I will show you. Now, if He hasn't already shown you, that's okay, because that's not His promise. God, just like He told Abraham, He said, go. He said to Abraham, basically, be obedient. And like Abraham, He says to us, I have an amazing plan for your life, but I'm not going to tell you the whole plan. Stay faithful, my friends.